Hola y bienvenidas a Sex and Spanglish, where we empower mujeres to get in touch with their bodies, own their pleasure, and where we discuss all the cochinadas our abuelas didn't tell us about. My name is Ana Lopez. I'm a sexpert, future doctora, certified sex and life coach, proud Latina, and your go-to guide for all things sex. I'm here to help you kick vergüenza to the curb and teach you to have guilt-free sexual pleasure. Basically, I'm here to help you have mind-blowing sex without the guilt and shame you learned to have growing up. Let's be real. La comunidad latina doesn't talk about sex, pero que suerte tienes because this Latina does. It is my vision to have Latinas worldwide discussing sex with one another just like they do with chisme. Así que prepárate. I'm about to change the way you view sex para siempre. Welcome back to another episode of the Sex and Spanglish podcast. And on today's episode, I have a very special treat. I have my first guest ever on the Sex and Spanglish podcast. So I'm super excited. On this episode, I invited a friend and fellow podcaster, Yesenia, on to talk about her biggest sexual struggle. And I was able to coach her through that, give her some tips to get started on her journey. And one, I think you all are really going to resonate with what she had to say because these are things that I hear time and time again. And so I definitely know that you all will resonate with that. And I really want you all to see what it looks like and sounds like to get coached. I hear this all the time of like, I don't even know what coaching sounds like or what that experience would be like. So this is a really great opportunity for y'all to listen in and hear how coaching works, right? I promise you, it's not as scary as it may sound. I also mentioned in this episode that there will be an opportunity for you to come on and get coached on your biggest sexual struggle, and the details for that are in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. Hello, everyone. I am here with Miss Yesenia. Hi, Yesenia.
Hi, Anna.
Hi. So I met you originally through Jessica with Viva la
hmm
Mami.
Yes.
And then we were able to reconnect in person actually at
hmm
the Viva la Mujer event, which I was super excited. You came, I was like just browsing around and you came up, you're like, you're Anna. And I'm like, well, people know me. This is weird. So that was fun. And I got to see you in
Yeah.
person. Also, I didn't tell you this. I did not know you were that tall because I'm like short. So I was like, oh, she's tall. Okay.
I am tall, yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then we connected and I made sure that we were following each other on social media and we've been, talking back and forth. And you had shared something. So I've been sharing for those of you that have been listening for a while. I talk a lot about cultural nuances. And so essentially, I like to talk about the dichos that we grew up hearing in Latino households. And recently I had shared about the dicho respeta, right? Which is not really a dicho, it's a word, right? But it's
Yeah.
really this idea that we need to respect our elders. And you had sent me a message and we're like sharing, about that. So do you want to share a little bit about like what you said about that and your experience?
Yeah, I of course, like all of us growing up in the Latino household, you're just told like not to talk back, or if you talk back, you're disrespectful, even if I felt like I always was trying to just express myself and it was like always just stop, stop. So that's kind of what I felt, back in the day. And a lot of it was also too about like criticisms and stuff. Like I would say like, why are you criticizing me about this? Stop criticizing me. And I was, kind of labeled as the malcriada because I would actually speak up for myself,
Yeah.
so that was kind of hard dealing with that as a kid, as most of us have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody the other day that she was like, I was sharing like a similar experience,
hmm
and she was like, "Were you called sangrona?" And I was like, "You too." So yeah, like
That's
malcriada,
another big one. Yeah.
sangrona, like bad attitude, right? And it's really,
Yes.
I always thought that was so interesting to me because I'm like, I'm really just sharing what I believe, or like my favorite is when like my mom would tell me to do something and I had like a question like about what she asked me to do because I
Yeah.
wanted to do what she wanted me to do, but I didn't quite understand. So I had
Yes.
like a follow-up question and that was seen as talking back. And I was like, bro, I'm just asking you a question.
I
Like,
just want to get it right so you don't yell at
right,
me again.
exactly. And if I do it wrong, you're gonna get mad. So like let's just, yeah. Hot mess.
Yes.
Okay. So I really quickly want to share like how
Yes.
this shows up in the bedroom. So when we are like respect your elders, yes, great. But the way that it is taught is the problem here. It's not that we're
Yeah.
taught to respect our elders, like that in and of itself is not problematic. It is the way that it is taught. And the way that it is taught and the way that we interpret it as children who our prefrontal cortexes have not quite, finished growing quite yet,
Yeah.
is we end up not speaking up for what it is that we want, and we
Mm,
assume that we don't know what we want. So if we have like an idea of like,
mm,
oh, what is it that I want? We're like, I don't know. We start second guessing ourselves, and then we abdicate that knowing off to other people. So magazines, I don't know, Reddit threads, Facebook groups, like
yeah.
everybody else knows better than we do. So then, of course, when we're talking about sex and we're talking about in the bedroom, it's like, oh, well, I actually don't know what I want. And I always question my
Mhm.
clients. I'm like, I actually don't believe that that's true. I think you haven't like noticed it yet, but you actually do. And
Yeah.
so it's really getting used to identifying that and feeling okay to actually say what it is that you want. Because for many of us, it feels kind of scary and like awkward to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm excited to see how this shows up, if at all, in what you
Yes.
shared. So I asked Yesenia to come on specifically because we were talking about this specific, we'll call it a dicho, right? This specific dicho about respecting your elders and this idea, right? But and she shared, what she just shared with you all. And I really wanted to share this because I know that she's not the only one. I know this for a fact, but y'all, everybody listening thinks that they're the only one. And so
Yes.
I like to share that. But also, I wanted to get her on here to coach her as well. And so I want to really quickly share what you shared in your application, Yesenia. And then so
Mhm.
everybody, is on the same page and we can all hear what you said. And then I will coach you, and so the listeners will get an idea of what it is like to be coached. And also, like, they're going to hear themselves in you, I know for a fact, because everybody thinks they're a special snowflake and no one else has the same problems and all of that. So I'm super
Yeah.
excited. Okay. So you said, my husband and I struggle to prioritize our sex life as much as we did before we had kids. We're always too tired or too stressed, and I personally struggle to separate my feelings versus my desire sometimes. For example, I want to have sex, but if I'm annoyed with my husband, I won't want to have sex. I want to be able to separate those feelings so I can just have sex. So, is
Yeah.
there anything else you want to say about that or like expand upon?
Not really. That's just kind of
Okay.
like the gist of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So, you had also mentioned that you're currently struggling with the sex or being too much in your mind
Mhm. Yeah.
during sex. Tell
Mhm.
me more about that.
I feel like, especially if I mean, I'm just gonna speak for myself. When I'm like trying to climax, I feel like it takes me so much focus. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's normal or that's just me, but so I feel like for the most part I am focused, but then like thoughts will come up and it'll kind of throw me off track. Then my
Mhm.
climax like bar, or whatever you want to call it, is like going down, and then I got to go back up.
Mhm.
So that's the only way that I can like describe that feeling.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
remember you had posted something recently about people thinking a lot during sex, and you said a little something about that, which I'm sure you'll share. But like not focusing too much on it, because I feel like as I'm like when I'm having sex, I'm like, okay, don't think about anything, like just focus, like. So then I'm like stressed because I'm like all these thoughts are not. I'm like pressuring myself too much. So that's kind of a
Yeah.
little bit about what I meant.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's start there and then we'll go into the prioritizing. And these things are definitely interconnected. So,
Okay.
when it comes to you being too much in your mind during sex, like we all are. But what
Okay.
happens, and I think particularly with women, and I think especially with those of us that are Latina, right? That we were constantly seeing what I was saying in that video. If anybody's seen it, is that we were raised seeing women constantly doing things, right? Like they never
Hmm.
sat down. Like when did you see someone sitting down and watching TV? Probably
Yeah.
Right. They're always like cooking, cleaning, doing something. Even if they are like watching TV, they're like folding laundry or like, doing something. And
Yeah.
so we are led to believe that that's what we're always supposed to be doing. So our mind is constantly running, but our mind is supposed to constantly be running anyways. And we're like, oh, when we get to sex, it's just supposed to magically turn off. And that's the only thing that we're supposed to be thinking about. And that's actually not true. And what I was saying in that video was like, what if we just let the mind wander? Like, what if that's okay?
Hmm.
Because what we do is we're like, oh, I had this thought about the laundry and now I'm thinking about the laundry and why is it there? And we're trying to like get it to go away. And we're like arguing with ourselves in our brain, like while we're having sex. And then our like metaphorical boner is like, whoop, like it's like going
Right,
all the way
exactly.
down, right? But it's because we're sitting there
Yeah.
like arguing with ourselves about like, why are you thinking this way? And I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but
Hmm.
some people will like be judging themselves for that of like, well, why are you thinking this? Like your partner's here like trying to please you and you're over here thinking about the laundry or what's for dinner or whatever else.
Ah, yes, yeah. I don't think that part. I just get like really, really frustrated at myself. But
Yeah.
at least, yeah, I mean, I could see easily how I could judge myself as well, or
Hmm.
maybe start judging myself for like not prioritizing some of those things so that I could focus during sex. So
Mm.
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So what would happen if you just like let your mind wander during sex?
I think I would be able to focus more. I mean, I never really thought of it that way, like when I,
Mhm.
heard that video that you posted, I was like, wow, I've never really heard that perspective, because nobody
Mhm.
talks about it. So,
Yeah, fair.
yes.
That's why I'm here.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for you, Jacinta, and of course, anyone listening, if
Yes.
your mind wanders during sex, I want you to just let it. It's not a problem. It's just let it wander. It's okay.
Yeah. And I
Or
would
it's
assume it's going to take some practice to
yeah,
to get better with it, right?
right. And
Okay.
and the reason why, something that you said earlier, it was like I try to stop it and then I'm just thinking about it even more. And because
Mm,
here's the thing, is because it's like in order to quote unquote stop thinking something, we have to think about it in the first place. So like you're thinking about it doble, right? And it's just like,
yes.
what if you just allowed it to be there? And like sure, it popped up in your brain, but it's fine. In the same way, like when you're driving, for example, you might be like, oh, I need to go, fold my laundry or something. You're not trying to
Hmm.
fold laundry while you're driving. You're just like, oh yeah, I'll fold the laundry when I get home or what have you.
Oh, I like that. That'll definitely help me for sure. I'm definitely going to try that. That's an easy one, I feel.
Yeah.
Just knowing that I can do that and just get better with it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's a practice, right? But
Hmm.
I find it so interesting that we don't really do this in other areas of our life. Like if we're like cooking dinner,
Yeah.
for example, and we have this like thought of like, oh, I need to wash laundry, or oh, I need to call the kids' school for something, or whatever else comes up,
Hmm.
we don't like immediately drop what we're doing to go do it. Sometimes we might, right? But we
Yeah.
really don't make it mean anything that those thoughts are popping up. But somehow during sex, it's different.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we are like fighting those thoughts. We're like, those thoughts aren't supposed to be here. This is like sexy time.
Yeah.
But you are a whole human being having the
Yes.
sexy time. And you have like your kids got school and like whatever else you got going on in your life.
Yeah. It's a lot. So I mean, I also think maybe before kids, maybe before being so busy, I was probably able to focus a little bit more, you know. And I think that's why, like, going back to like what I also shared, which I know we'll go into, but it's just like how it makes it harder when I'm so much in my mind, when I have so much going on. I have two
Hmm.
kids, two little ones, so it's definitely already hard to focus in general,
Mm,
when going into sex.
yeah. Tell me about it being hard to focus.
I think I think what makes it hard is like I don't really have time to transition or to process even just like how the day went. Typically
Mhm.
my husband and I, when we do have sex, it's at night. In the
Mhm.
morning, it's impossible. The kids are up at 6 a.m. So, nap time is kind of out the window as well. So it's like really at night when we're just
Mhm.
really exhausted.
Yeah.
So it's already hard enough ending the day being physically exhausted, mentally exhausted, and then trying to not really having that much time to process. And then, like, okay, like, let's have sex. And
Mhm.
then I feel like I struggle with like having that transition be a little bit more positive so that when I do get to have sex, it's enjoyable and just like stress free. Which it
Mhm.
is once I get past that point, but sometimes I'm
Mhm.
like just pushing myself, like just go and just like focus. So you can have sex, you'll feel better afterwards. So I don't know, that's just kind of like what I go through. So I'm like, I don't know if I need to be doing something different or what's what, how do I get through this? Because I don't have sex as often because of that. Sometimes my mind's just not there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Totally. Okay. This goes back to what you had said about prioritizing sex.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if it's, I'm not going to say that it's not a priority because for you because I don't want to put words in your mouth. But
Yeah.
if it's not as high of a priority and it's happening at the end of the day as well, what's
Mhm.
happening is basically, okay, we get up at 6 a.m. The kids, they got to go to school, you have work and like all of these other things to do, dinner, homework, what have you. And now it's
Mhm.
time for bed. And so
Mhm.
it's like this constant like circle of things that you have to do and there's no start and stop point in between.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
there isn't time for you to transition between the end of the day and sex. So it makes
Mhm.
sense then that you're like getting your back blown out, but yet your mind's like, oh, 6 a.m. tomorrow. Like your
Yeah.
mind's like already ahead or even back, right? Thinking about the day, like processing the day as you
Yes.
mentioned. So I just want to say
Mhm.
that that makes total sense that that's happening. And so I'm curious, what would you need to do in order to create that delineation for yourself of like, end of day, now we're going into bed, and then
Mhm.
sex happens there.
Well, I definitely feel like I personally need more breaks, like during the
Okay.
day, which is a challenge in itself as a mom. And I'm sure those listening and our moms, just like me with young kids, are like, yeah, but when do we get the break? Or I'm a
Right.
stay-at-home mom, for example, so I'm with the kids all day. So that
Mhm.
means no going to the bathroom by myself, all that. So but I am realizing now that I need to, like, for example, my husband will be done with work at 4. I've recently started to ask him, like, as soon as you get home, I need like 10 minutes to myself. I
Mhm.
just need it and not feel guilty about that because it's like little things like that that make me feel a little bit better and like being able to process all of those emotions, like I said.
Mhm.
And also, I think maybe more connection between my husband and I because as parents now it's like our connection and when we communicate is usually about the kids. So like how can
Mhm.
we kind of both work on maybe having a little more connection here and there throughout the day, whether it's a text, whether it's something else. Because I think that obviously again, after kids, that really hasn't been a priority. So I
Yeah.
think like when I said I don't prioritize sex, it's like I don't really prioritize anything else leading up to that, like
Mhm.
self-care or being able to relax. I was listening to your other episode about how some of us don't really know how to relax. And just kind of like getting some tips on that too, because I'm like, it's just so hard right now. So I think that's like what's been hard when it comes to like finding that time to transition
Yeah,
to have
definitely.
sex.
Okay.
Mhm.
So first, I want to acknowledge what you are doing and asking your husband of like, hey, I need some time alone. I also do want to mention, and I don't know if this is your experience or not, but
Mhm.
being like, well, one, overstimulation is a thing in general, but particularly when you're a mom and it sounds like your little ones are quite little,
Mhm.
that there can be like this overstimulation physically of like being overtouched, essentially. And this happens a
Mhm.
lot with moms, particularly when they're like, I've seen your kids. I don't think you're still breastfeeding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm not.
But it
Mhm.
is very common to be overtouched. And it typically happens with moms. And so that could also be another reason why your brain's kind of you're almost like you're like dissociating during sex is because you're like
Mhm.
overtouched and you're like basically your brain doesn't want to be there. It's like, like you want to have sex, but at the same time, it's like being that over touch. So I say that to say that having that separation is really helpful, of like
Okay. Yeah.
having that moment to yourself, and even like longer than 10 minutes. Like, are
Mhm.
you open to dad doing bedtime, right? Are you open to going on a walk or doing something that is going to rejuvenate you in
Mhm.
preparation for sex on the days that you want to have sex with your husband?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely can relate to being overstimulated. My kids are little, so they're like hanging off me all the time, you know?
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I can see how like that also too. Cause sometimes like when we're starting to have sex, like I kind of get, I have to get past the kind of getting annoyed because he's like touching me. And I'm like, I don't know why
Hmm.
I get annoyed sometimes,
Yeah.
but that makes sense that you're saying it now. Just like feeling physically overstimulated.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, if it's a day, I mean, obviously now we kind of do have to plan sex.
Hmm.
But I do kind of like that because it gives me a little challenge like, okay, we're gonna have sex tonight. I'm excited about it, but I also need to give myself this time and not feel guilty about it. Cause yeah, I mean, you're right. I could just ask him to do the bedtime. He can do it. It's just like I sometimes have guilt, which again
Yeah.
shows up in a lot of our
Yeah.
culture, especially as Latinas. So, and then now we're talking about sex, which is something that easily can be, oh, you're like prioritizing sex. Like you can
Hmm.
also feel guilty because of that, you
Hmm.
know? Um, but yeah, it's so important. It's so important to have a sex life.
Yeah, definitely. And okay, there's so many places I want to go with this. Okay, let's start here.
Yeah.
Okay, so first and foremost, you're like you're the mom here, and like you get to like, I imagine, I am not a mom, but I imagine that you, like, yes, there's the guilt, but there's also a part of you that actually wants to be there for bedtime as well, like guilt aside. I am not saying,
Yes.
and I'm not saying that you said this, but
Yeah.
I want to be very clear for people listening. Like, you don't have to completely give up bedtime, but maybe it's like a few nights a week. That's what dad, like, that's dad's job.
Hmm.
And not only dad's job, but like, how special is it that he gets to spend that dedicated time with his kids when they have me all day, right? So, yes, it's about giving you a break, but it's also about giving your children and your husband the opportunity to spend that dedicated time together that they don't otherwise have.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's true. That I mean, definitely. It's really crazy when you become a mom because you just like you're this one person before and then you become a mom and then you're just like, "Oh, I'm trying to work through all these emotions." But thanks for sharing that because it is true. And I go to therapy pretty regularly and that's one thing that I've talked about a lot. So, it's great that it's showing up in just this conversation. Again, like someone signing on trying to find out more about this topic with sex, but like it's really tied to so much of our lives. And
Mhm.
this is just an example. It's like that is something that can be looked at differently with the perspective, because I obviously know a lot of moms too where we just feel so guilty. We always want to be there, but it means like every single time, every single day, or we need to have a good excuse if the dad's going to
Mhm.
put the kids to sleep. But I mean, yeah, I mean it's a special time for them, and I definitely see it when my kids are with their dad with bedtime or whatever. The next day they'll be different around him or be different around me in a good way. So
Mhm.
they're having that bonding time. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to keep that in mind more now because I really definitely need that time for myself,
Yeah.
so that I can, like I said, have sex and enjoy it and being able to like not think so much during
Yeah.
that time.
And how does the time for you, like, I think that we often think that the time for ourselves is like selfish, or at least
Hmm.
we're told, right? But
Yes.
actually, being selfless, so putting everybody else first, is actually more selfish than putting ourselves first. So tell me how. I have an answer, but I want to hear from you. Tell me how putting yourself first is actually
Mhm.
the best thing for your kids.
Well, because when I'm, really showing up for myself, I'm really able to show up for them in the best way, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm going to admit it, when I'm not taking time for myself, I show up as the frustrated, annoyed, sometimes angry mom, and that's not what I want to be known for, so
Yeah.
I want to break those cycles,
Mhm.
obviously, like you said, growing up, especially the women in our lives, we never saw them, you know, relax or do something for themselves.
Mhm.
And sometimes we saw those angry mothers and, all, emotional mothers. And I want to break that cycle. So yeah, I mean, I definitely show up better when I'm
Yeah.
rested. When I've had sex, I also show up better. I do realize that. And even with my
Mhm.
husband, like him and I are just kind of like able to kind of get through things a little bit better because we've had that time for connection.
Mhm.
I definitely notice it.
Yeah. I heard someone say the other day, I wish I could remember who it was so I could credit them, but someone said the other day, like, when we give ourselves the leftovers, like our own leftovers, we give everybody like our leftovers or something like that. So in
Yeah.
other words, like when we give ourselves like whatever time is left over, then like
Mhm.
essentially the people in our lives are getting leftovers because we are not at full capacity pretty much ever if we're
Mhm.
not focusing on ourselves.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Moms need to focus more on themselves. I'm
totally.
trying my best to keep doing it more and
Yeah.
more.
It's definitely a skill.
Yeah.
But I see the effort there. So
Mhm.
kudos to you. But let's bring it back to sex. Okay.
Yes.
So, yes, prioritizing yourself, great. I love that you're open to planning sex. I think that a lot of
Mhm.
people think that, like, oh, that's boring. It's not spontaneous. But actually, it's more beneficial when you plan sex. And here is why it gives yourself, you overthinkers, which is probably every single person listening to this,
Mm.
it gives your brain something to look forward to. And not only look forward to, of like, oh, this is exciting. I get to do this weekend or, whatever other day you're going to do it, right?
Mhm.
But it's really preparing yourself mentally to do the thing so that your body is already somewhat ready and in that mode. We've probably all had the experience where sex is like almost like a surprise. Like we didn't anticipate having sex. That was the last thing on our mind, right? Because we're not prioritizing it. And then it's like, oh yeah, okay. I can get into this. And then it takes a little bit to warm up and then you're tired and then it's taking forever and you're like, "Oh my God, it's 11. I have to be up at 5," or what have you, right? So
Mhm.
planning sex can really prevent that from happening in the first place. So, for you, Yesenia, how
Mhm.
many times a week do you want to be having sex?
At least once, because
Hmm.
that is not happening right now.
Okay, let's start there.
Yeah.
What days work best for you?
Probably like a Saturday.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. So Saturdays, and it sounds like before bed.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So what, tell me what happens. Okay, you go to have sex.
Mhm.
What happens from the time that you're like not in the bedroom until the time you start having sex? Like, what does that look like?
Like so like when I'm kind of preparing, like leading up to it.
So you're still in like your evening, kind of mode.
Oh, evening
And
living. Okay.
then how do you end up going to the bedroom to have sex? Are you just like, "Oh, it's time to go to bed. We're going to go to bed," or like what happens?
No, typically like we'll put the kids to sleep and then my husband and I will just kind of hang out and, kind of talk a little bit. And then once we're like going to sleep, like it'll be the last thing we do. So like we're really
Mhm.
tired at
Okay.
this point. And I also want to note that when I say scheduling sex, like it's always in my head. I don't necessarily tell my
Oh,
husband.
oh,
I
okay.
because I he's like the one who's like always down. I mean,
Yeah.
mostly, and I'm the one who's more like specific, which is not
Yeah.
fair. I know. And now saying this out loud, I'm like, okay, maybe I actually do need to plan it with him. Maybe there's more like accountability on my part too.
Yeah. So you can, if he's always ready, you don't have to share it.
Oh,
You
okay.
can.
Okay.
I have some ideas, but let's go back to the scheduling for
Okay.
a
Yes.
second first. Okay. So this is so common, which I'm so glad I asked this because this is very common. They're like,
Mhm.
well, I have sex right before bed, which fair. You're both in
Mm,
bed. It's easy, right? And as
yes.
people that are super busy, we want easy. I get it.
Mhm.
I hear you. But notice in what you said was like, and if y'all are listening to this, rewind and listen to what she said. She said, we're already falling asleep and then we're going to bed to have sex. Sex is like a physical activity. No one wants
Mhm.
to do anything half asleep. Like I don't want to go to the gym half asleep. I don't want to do anything half asleep, right? And this
Yeah.
isn't just a you thing. Like this is like we all do this and I know I've been guilty
Mhm.
of this as well. So if you want to have sex before bed, like it's a matter of like going to bed like 15 minutes earlier before you're already falling asleep at the very least, right? Because if
Okay.
you even 15 minutes earlier of
Mhm.
like let's get in bed because once you start having sex it's fine, but
Mhm.
once that sleep has started to settle in, it's that much harder to become aroused, particularly for women and staying aroused.
Mm, makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even for yourself, you can just be like, hey, like, of course, you can plan it, but like,
Mhm.
well, let me start here. What time do y'all normally go to bed?
Like around 10, we're already in the bedroom, like 11 falling asleep.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you can even say, like, if you want to tell him ahead of time, by all means, you can do
Mhm.
what you want, but you can even say around like 9:45, like, hey, like, let's go in the room a little bit early.
Mhm. Yeah, we definitely could do that. 'Cause yeah,
Yeah.
we're falling asleep. And now that we're talking about it, my husband has actually told me that before. He's like, "Why do we have sex like right at the end of the day?" Like
Yeah.
he's like, "I'm sleepy. I want to go to sleep."
Yeah. You can even
So
and
yeah.
and I totally understand at the end of the day, especially as a couple, wanting to have that time together to just be humans, to be a couple, right?
Yeah.
Before going to bed. But
Mhm.
it is totally an option to put the kids to bed, go and have sex, and then go and be humans in the living room before bed if you wanted to. Or somewhere in
Yes.
between, right? Between putting the kids to bed and going to bed. Like you can
Mhm.
have sex in between and go back out in the living room or whatever it is and have a
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah, no, you're right. I haven't actually tried that, so that'll be definitely something that I want to try.
Yeah. Okay. There was one other thing that you mentioned. Okay. So they're going to bed early.
Mhm.
What was it? Now I don't remember.
Yeah, I was
Hmm,
just saying, yeah, go ahead.
I remember now. Okay. So the scheduling sex. Okay. So
Yes, yeah.
I think for you in your mind, getting an idea of like what time you want to have sex.
Mhm.
Now, you don't
Okay.
always like this isn't necessary. We're getting very like meticulous here, but I think to start, it is really helpful to have a time in mind. Because as you noticed, it's like, oh, now it's 11 and we're going to bed and like you're
Yeah.
already falling asleep. And so for you, like if you know that you're already starting to fall asleep around like 10, okay,
Mhm.
at 9:45, I need to set my alarm so that we're up and moving, right? Even
Mhm.
if it's just for yourself.
Got it. Yeah, I could definitely do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, in terms of telling your husband, you
Mhm.
can, but because you mentioned connection earlier,
Mhm.
a thing that you can do, there's multiple ways to do this, but an idea is to message him throughout the day for that point of connection. So it's kind of like a twofer. So it's like that
Mm.
point of connection of like, hey, tonight, like I want to have sex. Like
Mhm.
just a heads up or whatever you want to say. You get to decide, right? But the
Yeah.
idea of
Mhm.
having that point of connection, so you also kind of get like that mini break while you're at home with the kids as well. Obviously, they're still there. You're not necessarily doing it like you're not leaving or anything like that, but you're
Yeah.
having that small moment of connection throughout the day that is also then preparing him for later that night.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I like that idea because yeah, like you said, it's a mental break in that moment because I'm not thinking about the kids. I'm thinking about like my sex life and it's kind of makes it a little fun, like
Mhm.
we don't have as much fun now, my husband and I, as much as before. So it's like something flirty. I like that. The only thing that I've with that, I mentioned in the questionnaire that you sent me, that
Mhm.
sometimes like I'll be annoyed at my husband and then like I won't want to have
Mm.
sex with him even though
Mhm.
I do want to have sex. So like in
Uh-huh.
that instance, for example, let's say I text my husband in the middle of the day and later on I'm like, oh, I don't feel like having sex, like in my mind, because I'm
Mhm.
either annoyed at him or maybe I'm just like annoyed at the day and I'm like, I don't want to have sex anymore. Then I
Mhm.
feel bad, like, kind of starting all that up and then telling him like I don't really want to have sex.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know what I would do in that situation or how to
Yeah.
handle it.
If you didn't feel guilty afterwards, would you still want to have sex?
If I didn't have guilty of like,
Of having started it or having like said like, "Hey, let's have sex later." And then you're like, "Oh, now I'm annoyed and now I'm going to feel guilty if I say no."
um, so I'm just trying to think like because I'm just saying this also because like he has told me in the past that he has felt rejected from me.
Mhm.
And I'm like trying to be empathetic with him, but I'm also like, if I'm not feeling that, I don't want to like force myself, which I don't, but that's
Mhm.
why I say like I don't tell him when I plan it because I want to be able to just make sure that at the end of the day, if I do want to have sex, like I do want to,
Mhm.
you know. But as we were talking, like I definitely want to try different things. So like if I text him in the middle of the day, um, and later on if we're like not having sex and have I feel like I would feel guilty.
Yeah. Which fair.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think the guilt is coming from that like, "Oh, now he feels rejected and I caused that."
Yes. Yeah. That's what it definitely feels like. Mhm.
But notice that you're not rejecting him, you're rejecting the sex. And we all do this. We're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I'm being rejected personally." When in
Mhm.
reality, it's like, no, they're just saying no to sex. It has nothing to do with you. And you might be
Mhm.
annoyed at him, right? Or irritated by, whatever he's done or hasn't done, right? Like, you're feeling
Yeah.
annoyed and you
Mhm.
just don't feel like having sex, but you're not rejecting him in the sense of you're not like, okay, I hate you now, let's get divorced.
Mhm. Right. Yes. Which in my case, yes, that's what that means.
Yeah. So you can even say, granted, he's allowed to feel whatever he wants to feel, but
Mhm.
I would say more of the issue here is that you are blaming yourself for how he's feeling.
Mm.
When in reality, what you're saying is, I don't want to have sex with you right now. And
Mhm.
he's hearing it, which most of us do this, is
Yes.
like, oh, she doesn't want me.
Yes.
And that feels shitty. And I get that. And I can empathize with that.
Yeah.
But you're not rejecting him.
Mhm. Yeah. Which takes the pressure off of even me thinking that I am, feeling that guilt, like you said, because like
Hmm.
hearing that perspective, it's like, well, yeah, I'm not rejecting him. It's just, even if I'm annoyed at him, like, it's not that like you said, want to get a divorce. I just don't want to have sex right now. Like, I can't, mentally, I'm not able to focus on that right now.
Yeah. Have you ever felt rejected in your relationship with him? Sex or otherwise?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's just a part of being in a relationship, intimate or otherwise, right? Like
Right.
sometimes I feel rejected by my mom. I'm like, oh, thought I was different, right? Like it happens, right?
Right.
Like,
It's true.
but
It's
like,
true.
but that's just if we just consider that feeling
Hmm.
rejected sometimes is just a part of being in a relationship with someone, any type of relationship,
Hmm.
then we can like he's going to be rejected sometime or feel rejected sometimes and he's not going to feel rejected sometimes. And so if that is the case,
Mm.
either way, no matter what you do, what is it that you want to do when you don't want to have sex?
Hmm. I mean, I think just like having that pressure off of myself of like feeling guilty, because that's just
Mhm.
a me problem. It's not like my husband's actually like making me feel guilty
Mhm.
about.
Yeah.
Internally like feel this like so much guilt. But just like you saying that and like me kind of just like, okay, I don't have to feel guilty, like
Mhm.
even if he does have his feelings about it, he's not going to push me about it or anything. So
Mhm.
why am I putting that extra pressure on myself?
Mhm.
So I think just even that just makes me feel better about like, okay, I can say I want to have sex at 12 o'clock during the day. and I can change my mind later if I don't want
Yeah.
to, you know,
Just
and
like
make
you
it
could
a
be like,
normal thing.
hey, exactly. Just like you could be like, hey, we're gonna have tacos for dinner, and you're like, just kidding, we're getting takeout. Or like,
Yeah.
like whatever,
I'm not
right?
cooking
Like
tonight.
exactly. Pizza again,
Yeah.
right? Like you can change
True.
your mind, and sex is the same way. And I
Mm,
think where we oftentimes get caught up, it's because we are making ourselves responsible for their pleasure. Of like, oh, like I don't think we
mm,
actually say this to ourselves, but it's
yeah.
really like, oh, well, now they're not going to feel pleasure. So essentially, we're taking their pleasure away. But that's
I
actually
see.
not true because we experience pleasure outside of sex all the time. Pleasure is
Mhm.
just enjoyment, and sex is just one way that we experience pleasure. Now, sure, they may have been anticipating sex and excited about it, what have you. But if they really want to have sex, solo sex is an option. But we
Mhm.
always have the right to say no at any given time. And that's them included.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he has said no to me at times too, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely definitely makes a lot of sense just hearing a different perspective.
Yeah. Okay. We talked a lot.
Mhm.
Are there any like lingering questions or clarification that you need?
No, I mean, everything I just appreciate you kind of making it super simple, like, yeah, just like you can change your mind about if you want a burger or not or whatever it is, like I need to figure out like how to change that perspective because like sex is so like I don't even know like I put it in a box and it's in a box by itself and it has like all these crazy rules around it and I don't know
Mhm.
why, you know. Probably because of society, probably because we don't talk about it, so what you
Right.
know, all of that. But yeah, no, it makes so much sense. And I think it definitely eases my mind because I have an anxious mind, so all of this just kind of eased my mind. So I'm excited to like try out some of the things that we talked about.
Yeah, exciting. Okay, well, I'm
Yes.
glad I could help. To summarize, you are going to plan sex
Yes.
Saturdays, whatever time you get to
Mhm.
decide, but choosing a time just so for your own mental load.
Mhm.
Just choosing
Yeah.
a time and then actually following through with that. You can schedule it with your husband or not, but you can also have that check in throughout the day. And even if you do schedule it with him of like, hey, we have, y'all have this conversation about we're gonna do it at, I don't know, 9:45 or whatever on Saturday, you can
Mhm.
still have that check in with him.
Mhm. Yeah. Before that time actually comes.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And even if, okay, what are we on? What is today? Wednesday? Okay. So even
Wednesday.
if you had the conversation today about
Mhm.
doing this on Saturday, you could begin the foreplay today of leading up to that, right? Of being
Yeah.
like, oh, Saturday is going to be so great, or whatever you want to share, right? But like having those little conversations here and there,
Mhm.
long distance relationships actually have, I don't say they have the best sex, but almost like it's very, what is the word I'm looking for? Not unique. We'll call it unique. Unique, creative kind of sex in the sense that if they want to have sex, they have to figure out how to do it from long distance.
Oh,
And this is
yes.
one
Mhm.
way to do it. So I like to think about, I'm not in a long distance relationship. However, I like to think about like, how can I do this? My partner, we live together, right? But like, how can I create kind of like this essence of like this longing in the same way if we were in two different states?
Okay. Yeah. I like that idea as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Gives me a lot to be excited about. I'm like excited because I've never really looked at sex in this way, you know? So,
Mhm.
and it's like I feel excited but also not pressured or all those like pressures or guilt feelings that I usually have around it sometimes.
Mhm.
I'm not feeling it. So, thank you.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yes.
Okay, you'll have to let me know how it goes.
Yes, I do.
Super exciting. Okay, so final thing is
Mhm.
I had asked you a question in the application to
Mhm.
apply. Also, anyone listening, if you want to be coached on this podcast, there will be a link in the show notes for you to apply. Um, It wasn't that hard of an application, was it?
No. I did have to
Okay.
think about it, but because I wanted to be intentional. But no, it was not difficult.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so yeah, anyone listening, there is an application in the bio or in the show notes. Go ahead and fill that out if you want to be a guest and get coached on this podcast. But I asked you a question and you gave such a good answer, which gave me an idea, and I'm trying to find it right now. I have it here somewhere. Um, where is it at? Okay, so I asked you, and I actually have your answer. I'm going to share it in the chat because I want you to say it out loud. So I'm going to share it now,
Okay.
but I'm going to explain why. So I had asked you, what's something you wish you could say out loud about sex but haven't? And your answer was so good that I was like, I did not mention this in the beginning, I don't think. Yesenia is my first guest on the podcast, so I'm super excited
Yay.
and like happy that you were willing to do this. It's
Yes.
been something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. But I had the idea of asking this question at the end of every single episode because my whole thing is getting Latinos talking about sex in the same way that they do with chisme. So being very comfortable, and the way that we get comfortable is by being uncomfortable and talking about the things, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you this question and then I want you to share your answer out loud.
Okay.
So, what is something you wish you could say out loud about sex but haven't?
I love sex and I'm tired of feeling ashamed of that.
I love that. I'm so excited that you decided to come on and have this conversation with me. Super exciting. It's a step in the right direction and getting rid of that shame and, acknowledging like I love sex.
Yes. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. You're awesome. When I met you through the Viva la Mami workshop, I was like, this is awesome. I'm like, we need to be talking more about this. I remember even the conversations we were having during the workshop were very open and you just created a very safe space. And I think that was a big part of it because we already don't feel comfortable talking about this topic, but you do an amazing job of just making it feel so like normal, which it is.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for being on. Are there any final words that you would like to share? Anything that you want to share with people?
No, just I encourage others to have those conversations. I encourage others to also have those conversations with like friends because you'd be surprised. We probably all are going through, like you said, going through the same things, and it's okay to talk about it. It's normal, you know. So, yeah, that's what I encourage everybody to do.
Awesome. All
Yeah.
right, y'all. Well, I will see y'all next week.
Okay. Bye.
If you have made it this far, this means that you have listened to the entire episode, assuming that you didn't skip any parts. So, first and foremost, I want to thank you. It is truly an honor and a privilege to get to share my knowledge and expertise every single week. And the fact that people listen is mind blowing to this day. So, thank you. And before you go, I have a quick favor to ask of you. If you have gained anything from this podcast at all, if you learned one thing, if you've subscribed to the podcast, if you plan on coming back next week, if you have applied anything that I've taught you and it has brought you amazing results or even good results, right? Like if you've gotten results from what I've shared by applying what I've shared here in the podcast, I want to ask you to rate this podcast. I'm currently in the process of sharing the impact that this podcast has on the listeners, on the audience, on you all. And that means that I need to hear from you all. I know that people are listening because I see the subscriber number go up each and every week. I see the amount of time being listened to each episode. I see that go up every single week. So I know y'all are listening to entire episodes. I know y'all are listening to these episodes multiple times. I know people are subscribing. So the analytics say so, but I want to hear from you all. So if you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review. So, give it a star rating and share 1 to 2 sentences about something that you've learned from the podcast, what you think listeners need to know. If you are on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment letting me know the impact that this episode has had on you. If you are listening on Spotify or some other platform, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram at Sex and Spanglish. You can also send me an email, anna@sexandspanglish.com, and let me know what is resonating for you. What did you take from this podcast and apply to your own life where you've gotten results? Tell me what you like. Also, tell me what you don't like and provide me with suggestions for topics and questions that you might have. I also want to remind you that I do have an anonymous question box. So feel free to go to the show notes and submit your questions there, and I may share them on the podcast anonymously. Of course, all of that is in the show notes. But again, thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. And if there has been anything that you've learned from this episode, please, please, please do me the favor and let me know, whether it be through Apple review, whether it be through DM, whether it be on your stories and sharing like a little snippet and tagging me in it, whether it be a comment on YouTube. I just ask that you share what your thoughts are on this podcast. I'll talk to you next week.